starting at age 30, trying to get to $3 million saved up by age 60, and all of it in a Roth IRA. The path is clear. What are the most difficult parts? I'll show you the path and what you need to look out for along the way. I got that and more coming up. Okay, so I was doing some doom scrolling. I'm just gonna admit it, okay? And I get a decent amount of financial stuff that shows up in my feed and YouTube, and so I just flip, and so much of the financial stuff I look at and I just want to argue with, but I'm sort of not that kind of person. I know there's people out there that, then play it and then argue with it, and not really that kind of person. But I saw this one and it was very simple and it was straightforward, and I looked at, like, I did the smell test and I was like, I think that's right. And I don't know, it's just like some plain text with like a cat underneath it. I have no idea, but apparently those get views. The cat was just there for your pleasure, I guess. I don't know. It was doing nothing, but it was the text that stood out to me. And I was like, yeah, I think that's right. And it's simple. Oh, but it's not. It's actually very, very difficult. Here's what it was. So a 30-year-old married couple has an annual income of $100,000. They invest 20 grand annually into their Roth 401k. By age 59 and a half, I'm going to just say by 60, okay, 59 and a half is that magic number where you can pull out the growth and pull dollars out without a early withdrawal penalty, that sort of thing. But let's just say 60. They'll have $3.3 million invested. They'll withdraw 4% of that annually. That's 132 grand. Middle class millionaires in the making. Love it. Love it. And I looked at it, it was like, okay, very simple. I think the math is sound. Let me double check it. I did. Yep. At a 10% rate of return, if you stick to that 20%. I actually wondered, well, the 20 grand that they're contributing, are they escalating that? Is there an inflation adjustment that you start at 20 grand, you increase it? No. Nope. So starting at age 30, investing 20 grand every year, boom, 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 not an increasing number, and getting about a 10% rate of return on average, letting compound interest do the work. Yeah, you end up with almost $3.3 million by the time you're age 60. Who wouldn't want that? Any one of us would say, yeah, sign me up. I'm all for it. Well, listen, what I love about it is the simplicity, and yet don't confuse simple for easy. There are three very, very difficult parts of this path if you want to walk it. And I want to point it out so that you're not surprised by the difficulty and that you see it, you're ready for it, and you can work through it. Number one, it probably jumped off the page to you as well. If you're making 100 grand and you save 20 grand, that's a lot. That's a lot. Saving 20 grand on 100,000, that's a lot. That is hard to do. Okay, so this is 20 grand before taxes, yeah, before your mortgage, yeah. I mean, you're in your 30s, so you mortgage or rent, before student loans, before car loans, before kids in your 30s. You're probably starting a family. You're living on 80 grand, but that's gross. Then you've got to take away all those things. That is a big sacrifice, okay? You know that here on the Wise Money Show, we talk about, well, wherever you're at, I would want you to be saving 15% towards retirement. Ideally, then, I'd want you to do a 5-factor retirement plan, confirm the right amount for you, whether it should be 15, maybe it could be 12, maybe it could be 18. But without doing that analysis, I want you to start at 15, okay? A company match, if you get that, that's above and beyond. So in this scenario, yeah, this would be 20%, or at least 20% to start. Hopefully the $100,000 of income that grows with time and your income is growing, that 20 grand in this assumption is staying the same. But yeah, initially, I mean, that's the biggest one. That is the biggest one right there is, gosh, can you live on what's left? Could you commit to saving 20 grand on $100,000 of income and be able to, kind of deal with, well, what sort of lifestyle are we left with? What choices do we have to make with the day-to-day? That would be, to me, the biggest hurdle. Now, hopefully for you, this would be a short-term sacrifice and maybe very well worth getting to that $3 million mark by the time you're age 60. I mean, think about it, consider that. And so really that may be worth it. But in your situation, maybe a two-income household, maybe you're making more than 100,000. Maybe you're making 120. Maybe you're making 130. And maybe that income can grow throughout your career. I would expect so. And maybe that 20 grand then seems a little bit more achievable and requires less kind of lifestyle sacrifice. But to me, that's the That's the biggest hurdle, biggest challenge to this path. Doable, but a challenge. Okay, so that's number one. The second biggest challenge, you probably missed it, Roth. Roth. Now, if you're a fan of the Wise Money Show, I love the Roth. And it's not one size fits all. I always say that because it truly isn't. There's plenty of times where it's going to make sense to do pre-tax, but golly, I love the Roth, especially 30 years old and only making $100,000 as a family. Yeah, you're in the middle of the 12% tax bracket. I love it. Do the Roth. However, I just mentioned with problem number one, cash flow is tight, especially if you're going to save 20 grand out of the gate. And that tax savings by deferring the tax and saving pre-tax could be very, very appealing. Think about it. If you make 100,000 and you save 20 grand into the Roth, okay, great. You're paying tax on 100, but you get a standard deduction. You might itemize, but let's say you get a standard deduction of 30 grand, and I'm oversimplifying, just rounding those numbers, but 30 grand standard deduction for a married couple. So you pay tax on 70. The first almost $24,000 currently, today's tax rates would be at 10%. The rest of it, all the way up to approximately 100,000, but up to 70 grand is at 12%. I'll take it, right? It puts you in the middle of the 12% tax bracket. Your federal taxes on that, about $8,000, okay? About 8 grand. And if you live in a state with state taxes, Indiana, Michigan have very similar tax laws, consider another 3 grand or so of taxes on top of that. So again, on your 100,000, you're sending 20 of it to the Roth IRA, so you're living on 80, but then about 10, maybe 11 grand is actually coming out for taxes on top of that. That doesn't even include FICA taxes. So yeah, pennies are getting pinched, and it could be very tempting to say, you know what? Roth IRA and Roth, all the tax-free dollars out there in the future, yeah, that'd be great, but we are struggling to put food on the table and have some experience and do some things today. What if we shifted this to pre-tax and got a tax deduction? If you did that, that would reduce your taxes by about $2,500, $3 grand if you include state taxes, something like that. That could be meaningful, right? That could be meaningful. So if this path of from age 30 to age 60, building $3 million into your Roth IRA, kind of struggle number 2 is, would you have the discipline to say, no, I'll pay the taxes today. It's okay to have all of that tax-free growth out there in the future. That's struggle number 2. It'd be worth it. In my opinion, it would be worth it, but you've got to work that out, working with your CFP, and have a very, very clear and compelling vision for your future. Now, challenge number 3, again, along this incredible path, self-made, middle-class millionaires is what the post said. Problem number 3, challenge number 3 is allowing that eighth wonder of the world, that compound interest, allowing it to work. Because this math is assuming a 10% average annual return. Typically, we tend to look at 8%, maybe 9%, rarely 10%. Why? Well, 10 is actually what the market's done. However, a lot of times people get jittery, or we have an extreme market event and they make some changes. And if you do that early in your career, maybe you can recover from it, or meaning you get back on the roller coaster. You do that later in your career. And we've seen frequently where it's hard for people to get back on the roller coaster, because the challenge is the problems that were happening either in the economy or in the world or whatever the challenges were that caused the market to go down, they're not solved by the time the market starts going up. And you might say, yes, they are. Of course, that's how it works. Once the problem's solved, the market goes up. I'm disappointed to tell you, unfortunately, it never works that way. Even with COVID, right? Even with COVID, the most recent kind of really, really extreme market event, it wasn't like, okay, problem solved, no more COVID, everyone go out and live their normal life. That was just sort of a blip on the radar and the market's going to start going up. No. It was in the darkest days. I mean, the spread was still spreading significantly. What changed? Well, it was another round of stimulus announced by the Fed, and that finally just moved the market to, okay, we're not going to fight the Fed, and it just started moving from there. And that's not an isolated incident. So often the market starts rebounding while the news is and the situation is continuing to get worse. And so therefore, will you have the discipline, the patience, the temperament, the long-term vision to stick with that compound growth rate, that disciplined investment strategy, such that you'd be able to get a compound annual growth rate of 10%. If not, it's going to be very hard to achieve 3 million, even a million, right? You've got to have that disciplined long-term strategy. The path from nothing at age 30 to $3 million in a Roth IRA, all tax-free by the time you're 60, early retirement. Guys, that path is clear, okay? It's simple. It's just not easy. It's just not easy to do. You're going to want the help of working with your certified financial planner to, yes, help you with that investment strategy and the discipline needed during the most challenging times, help you determine, all right, is it best right now to do Roth, or is there ever a year or two where you should do pre-tax? What about your company match? Do you convert that to Roth as well? What should you do there? How does this fit within your overall tax strategy? Do you have an HSA when you start having kids? How does this influence things? And then lastly, how does this heavy contribution, especially in those early stages, 20 grand on 100,000, how does it fit within your entire financial picture and your present financial position so you still have balance in your financial life? That and all 6 areas of your financial life, your CFP can help you with that. If you don't have a CFP on your team, you can contact one on my team. Find us online, Korhorn.com. That's Korhorn with the K. WiseMoneyShow.com. You can find us there as well, or give us a call, 574-247-5898. All right, there you have it. Go on, take your next wise step in your financial life.